very much. All right, we are going to head back to Liz Claman, who has a first-on-Fox interview with former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. Liz.
We're here at the Swiss Alpine Middle School, where the forum is putting on a panel that's completely oversubscribed, jam-packed with a huge waiting list. The big draw, former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair. The topic, religion. But before he went in front of the crowds, he came before our cameras in a First on Fox Business interview for a very revealing conversation about many issues facing the world. I just want to begin by asking you, what do you think is the biggest threat to our world right now?
Well, one of the things you learn about politics is that the threats don't often come singly. They can come multiply. And we've definitely got a big issue in Europe still with our economy and with the global economy as a whole, and that obviously will concern the business community here. Personally, what I spend a lot of time on is the threat of radical Islamist terrorism, which I think is a massive threat for us. And then, of course, we've got the issue continuing with Russia and Ukraine. So I can see about 3 issues right now that, even in the short time I've been here already, are exercising people and concerning them. Well,
let's take the terror issue. In just the last 48 hours, ISIS has threatened to kill 2 Japanese hostages. The Yemen palace for the president has been stormed by Muslim rebels. We also have a bus attack in Israel by a Palestinian with a knife. And this just 2 weeks after the murderous rampage by Islamic rebels who came and murdered the Charlie Hebdo journalists. What is going on, and how do we stop this?
So my view is this is global, it's growing, and we need both to have the force capability to go and to fight and defeat these people on the ground, and secondly, I think there's a longer term question personally, which is all to do with how we're educating young people in certain countries where we are, in my view, incubating this problem of terrorism by teaching them a religiously warped view of the world. So, you know, this is going to be with us a long time. It's a generational struggle. You know, it's not for the last president, this president, the next president. It's going to continue, I'm afraid, for some time.
When you were Prime Minister, the 2005 London attacks, how did you handle that? And what did you do with the police versus the Muslim communities that seemed to work well?
The first thing is to try and bring people together, as indeed the French president's done in France. But then the next step is to say, well, how are we going to protect ourselves? And that's where we introduced a set of new security measures. We obviously had to step up surveillance. But I think we're not going to defeat this in our own country unless we're defeating it where it's originating.
I'm just trying to reflect what people out there are thinking. Is the answer, and we know it isn't, but there are people who say just ring fence the heavily Muslim nations, keep them away from us. Why is that not the answer?
Well, that's not the answer for 2 reasons. First of all, at least if you're a European, we have something like 40 million Muslims now in Europe. Mm-hmm. And, you know, a country like France has 5 to 6 million Muslims. So we've got our own Muslim population. But secondly, it's in the nature of these people, as we know indeed from 9/11, that they're not going to stay where they are.
Do you think that the leaders here in Davos should show a sign of solidarity as world leaders did in Paris just a couple of weeks ago?
I think that's important, but I also think it's important that we recognize that we agree with each other. The question is, what do we do about those that are in fierce dispute with us?
Russia, Vladimir Putin, he is pushed further and further into a corner with the Western sanctions. We've seen that they're now affecting companies in Russia, and then, of course, a plummeting price of oil. Does he get more dangerous as he becomes more isolated?
I think there's a risk of that, and I think it's really important that we protect Ukraine, obviously, and its independence and its sovereignty. There are areas where we need to cooperate with Russia, particularly in the Middle East. Were you shocked that they just went in and snatched Crimea? Yes, I think everyone was shocked, and this is the first time, I think, since the Second World War where there'd been the annexation of territory in that way from a sovereign state.
Thank you, Liz. All right, countdown to the closing bell rings in about 50 minutes. We are